Venus, the goddess of love, and her sidekick Mercury, both in sensual Scorpio, have braided together romance and lust into an erotic role that is perfect for the vampire to take the center stage. This energy reaches a peak of intensity and passion this Wednesday, October 30th, just in time for Scorpio's holiday, Halloween. So hi, I'm Judith Royal. I'm an archetypal astrologer, and that means I just love, like all of our ancient ancestors, to look to the stars above us to gain some meaning we can use to explain mysteries here on Earth. And Scorpio will help us do that this week more than any time before. And why do I say that? Because this Monday through Friday, November 1st, we have the Sun in Scorpio along with Venus and Mercury in Scorpio. And Monday, we start the week with the Moon in Scorpio. So we're just on the waning side of the new Moon in Scorpio yesterday, October 27th. So if you didn't have time over the weekend to write your intentions for this new lunar cycle, you can still do it Monday and have the energy of that new moon still with you. And I think you want to get on top of that in a hurry, actually, along with all of your communications, because all of this Scorpio energy that is going to peak on Wednesday, well, the next day for Halloween, we have sort of a mysterious treat served up because Mercury is going to turn retrograde on the 31st. And remember, he's in an unusually long stay in Scorpio because of this retrograde phase. And actually, he's there from October the 3rd, so you can think back to how your communications have been going since then. And he's going to stay there until December the 9th. And in the retrograde phase, what you want to think about is that in a way, mentally, you get to retrace your steps back to October 3rd and pick up a piece perhaps that you missed, or you were too busy to make that phone call or write that email, but it was still nagging at you. And so you want to take this time before Halloween, because with Scorpio, there's a major opportunity ahead of you to raise your conscious awareness, especially of any lingering fears you have of intimacy, of getting close, of love itself. So let's face up to this. Let's use this sleuth energy, also this shaman energy of Scorpio, to be our own private eye, our own Scotland Yard detective, and look for the place where you have buried. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, the lord of the underworld, so there are a lot of coffins down there, and metaphorically in our unconscious mind, where we've buried something that waits for our forgiveness. And of course, the high vibration of Halloween is that, we're going into those coffins in our unconscious mind, and for some of us in our conscious mind, where we're deliberately avoiding something that we know we need to do, which is to forgive. Because Venus here, she's taking us on that deeper dive where we really look at those relationships of the past, and phrases like, till death do us part, promises that we've made and did not keep, and we've judged ourselves harshly for that. We can see the representation, the archetype, in movies about zombies and so forth, especially also about vampires. But basically, that these undead ghosts, they're undead because they're unforgiven. And so showing up is a gift because that is the way to healing. And we can really laugh. I certainly have at some of the resentments and grudges I thought I was justified in holding, and I was really just hurting myself, right? Because it darkened my own mind. It darkened my mind only because I refused to see it. I was keeping my anger hidden from my own self, right? So it never gets resolved. Indulge me just for a minute so I can correct the archetype of the vampire back to its original form. And it was a very old movie called Nosferatu. And in that, that was Dracula. And he fell in love, of course, with this beautiful woman. And that's in most of the stories, Dracula's Bride. It's really a sexual obsession, sort of, mixed up, as I was talking about earlier, with love and romance. But anyway, in that movie, the way it ends after all the shenanigans is that the woman he loved had compassion enough to hold him in her embrace for the length of a whole night until the sun's rays broke in the dawn. And of course, the vampire's there without the coffin. And so in the light of day, he dissolves into dust, into dry dust. That's the shaman's journey version of all of this. After all, the overarching metaphor is that of metamorphosis, in which we are literally transformed into the higher version of ourselves. So I thought it would be fun to tell you about a famous person who has her moon in the sign of Scorpio, just so you can see how this plays out within us. And so I chose Sue Monk Kidd. She wrote a book called When the Heart Waits. And in it, it's a book about butterfly and the metamorphosis, particularly in the cocoon stage, where we are waiting while changing, and all the while we're doing that in the darkness. And she goes on to talk about the fact that in her research, she uncovered a little-known phenomenon, which is that some caterpillars refuse to yield to the cocoon. When they get that instinctual call to start spinning the cocoon, they don't necessarily do it. And that some of them cling to the old larval life, and they can put off entering the cocoon, postponing their own transformation for a year or more, trying to hold on to the known self that feels safe, right? And so then at the precise moment of the greatest possibility for becoming the butterfly, for freeing ourselves, there can be a desperate clinging that rises up in us, and we try to make this one last stand that we think we're saving our life by saving our old self and all those antiquated beliefs that go with it. And so in the end, she asks a beautiful question, I think, that I'll pass on to you. She says, how do we fashion an environment for ourselves in which we become stripped and stilled, in which the ego patterns of a lifetime begin to move away, and in our innermost spiritual life, we are rebuilt, we are transformed? She suggests that by looking towards God, looking towards love that is within us, we can weave our own spiritual environment of unconditional love. And here I want to add my own personal story, because always we know these butterflies come out of the cocoon and they don't quite know what to do, and so they're really quite vulnerable for a while. But I had a friend who a few years ago, she raises butterflies, and I just love that. But she brought to a meeting we were having some newly emerged butterflies, and I was amazed because they will just sit on your hand and your head and everywhere, and they'll just sit there. And what I didn't know, but she taught me, is that they have to wait for their wings to dry. Isn't that a beautiful metaphor? Just imagine yourself, all this work you have done on the spiritual path, all of your searching, all of your praying and meditating. And here you are, this beautiful, brand new butterfly. And yet we have to wait for our wings to dry. I was with that butterfly, the one that was right on my shoulder, for a long time. And I thought about how she had to trust in my benevolence. She had no choice, really. And she knew she needed the help. She had to be in the light. She had to expose herself to the brightness of daylight. Even though vulnerable, she could not hide. And while she's there, unable to fly, I could imagine that she might be thinking all kinds of things, like there's something wrong with her, there's something defective, why can't she fly? Or she's sitting there in such beautiful innocence and ignorance, because she doesn't even know yet what flying is. She doesn't even know that the most exhilarating feeling she's ever had is just on the other side of a few hours in the light. I have to say, the potential of the joy in our lives in this same kind of process. I mean, this is just bringing tears to my eyes of compassion and how much we need the protection of one another, not by building walls or hiding or lying in deceit, but rather of encouragement, of giving us just that, come on out, just that little bit of, it's going to be okay. And I think that you, like myself, can sense that the world is now at a boiling point. And it is at that very time that the new state is waiting, that the boiling water transforms into steam, and there is an entirely new state of being, unlike anything that was before. And it just happened by nature. So the stars and the beautiful rhythm of their orbits are dishing up for us a lovely resonance, a lovely vibe. And so I want to tell you about this by asking you a question. Do you remember what happened to you at age 29? Or if you're not at 29 yet, what can you sense is ahead of you, building up like the boiling water, ready to transmute into a new life? And of course, that is the infamous Saturn return, because Saturn takes 29 years to make one orbit. And so we are also now seeing and celebrating, it's such a beautiful synchronicity. On November the 9th, will be the Saturn return, the 30th year since the fall of the Berlin Wall. And so Saturn is showing us that that is complete. That whole cycle is a cycle of completion. Even though in the news we read that, maybe Trump wants to build more walls, or even he wants to build walls in Colorado, not even a border state, right? But it doesn't matter, you see, because the universe has a different idea. The angels have a totally different idea, that instead of walling off, or walling someone out, we stand now on the brink of that same spontaneous rebellion that took rock by rock, brick by brick, that took that Berlin Wall down. There was no plan to do that. There was no news announcement about it, nothing of the kind. It was sheer resonance with the universe that people just spontaneously gathered, and by their sheer numbers changed the face of an entire country, and really also the entire world cheered for that event. So I encourage you to think back in your life, 29, 30 years, what is coming back around now in a metamorphosis cycle, someplace where you have for 29 or 30 years, you were building in that cocoon and you were transforming in the darkness, not quite knowing which way to go or what is happening. And now you are that butterfly and you're out with your wings, maybe still a little damp, I don't know. And you're ready to start another new cycle that will be a completely different structure in your life than what you had before. And if you're not sure, just be curious, because the hero and the heroine in all of us is called right at this time to be at least curious about the walls that we have built around our own hearts, where compassion is held for a few but not for all, where we all know that it's true that we are at a tipping point. And think about this for a moment. Can't you just sense that the age of avatars is just on the other side of one sunny day, and that someone right now is about to light the millionth candle that will start the contagion of light around the world? So when I'm inspired like this, I love to turn to Rumi, because, well, obviously it's beautiful poetry, but he's also so full of that Scorpio passion and intensity. And so from Coleman Banks' translation of Rumi, we get this bit of magic. Someone who does not run toward the allure of love walks a road where nothing lives. But look at this dove here, who senses the love hawk floating above and waits, and will not be driven nor scared into safety. And that, I think, is faith. So I love you. Spread it around. Extend your light consciously. You're doing it unconsciously anyway. And thanks for listening. Thanks for being with me. So I'm Judith Royal. You can always reach me if you would like to take a dive into your own stars. My email is judith@judithroyal.com. I'll say bye for now.